bitches, I need to borrow a truck.
Yeah.
Back and
Yeah. No, all of the aviation apps do tenths of it, how many tenths of an inch every hour they forecast it. And so you have to go through and add up 12 numbers in a row. So when, the first time I did that for my wife, she's like, how much snow are we getting? It was like, I had counted up to like 48 or something. I was like, no, not 48 inches, just 4.8. Oh, you had me going. But, well, it's 5:15, but we gotta wait for
We
Dan.
gotta wait for Dan.
You-
I physically handed him. Yeah, I did.
And Jay is out of town this month, so he will not be here, and the mayor had a meeting in Indianapolis, so he will be unable to attend tonight.
That's good there.
If we don't see Dan in a couple of minutes, I'll give him a quick call, see if I can get him. Okay.
It's Jade today. Yeah.
I think I do it, Mike.
How come Mary has a gavel? She get right on
It was here when I got here. I think this is where someone important sits. I am not here. does
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's for the nameplates.
Oh.
Nice feature.
Oh.
I think that just stays there.
I've been here for 40 years, I've never had a meeting come to a problem like this.
Now you're asking questions. Funny.
Because I remember a few months back, after this notes, I was working on how's he spaced it?
Did you call in and just tell us?
It's okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember that.
Series what?
He thought it was 4:30, not 5, or he thought it was 4:15, so he was just now off. He's on his way.
Oh,
So he's on his way. So if everybody's okay waiting a couple minutes, he'll be here shortly.
There's something in that chair, you did that.
well, you can lose.
Mine was my watch. I just
I lose a
put my watch on. I got to Fort Wayne, I figured it out. I just put my watch an hour fast.
No.
So I was supposed to be over there at 11:30 this morning. Showed up at 10:30.
Oh.
I walk in and they're like, "You're early. You're supposed to be here at 11:30, 12." And I was like, "Yeah, it's 11:30." And they're like, "No, it's 10:30." Okay, I'll
Whatever
hang
you
out.
say.
So that was fine by me. I got a lot of stuff done. So nobody coming to my office. Got to sit there in
It's
a
like when I
quiet
came
room
in
and take care of a bunch of emails and then sit there. So it was
Oh,
very
yeah.
nice.
And the people, no, at 4 instead of 5, and everyone was walking out, I thought, what are they all staying so late for? I mean, it still didn't get me even then,
Yeah.
that I was off.
What was the,
Because I could tell,
what
it
was
was
the
like,
NIPSCO?
oh my
They're
goodness.
working
Not
on
NIPSCO,
something.
but American Power for 9,200.
We'll talk about it in the board meeting, but it was, we had to pay to fix some of the lights on the towers. out
I
there.
saw them out, I saw
Yeah,
quite
so
a
we had
few.
to- There were
Yeah.
actual feed lines to them that were damaged that had to get replaced. And so that's why it was more expensive
Yeah,
this time.
then
And it was
normal.
actually, that was 2 bills, not just one, right?
No, that was just.
That was just the one?
Just the one tower?
No, it was multiple towers. It was, I couldn't remember if it was split between one bill or 2. But yeah,
Oh.
it was multiple towers that needed new lines run to them. The
Yeah.
infrastructure's 40 years old.
I know it
50
is,
years
I know,
old, so
yeah.
that's one of the nice things about, once we get the power lines lowered. I don't know if you remember, a couple months ago, we discussed, AEP brought to our attention that equipment needs to be replaced. And it
Mhm.
was gonna be 150,000 was their initial estimate, and we got that down to 70 or 80, something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And now that the power lines are coming down, now we don't even need to worry about that, so.
Are we going to have to light those, or do you know that yet?
Our
We don't
goal
know.
is to get them so that we don't have to, but the FAA may, at least
Yeah.
the day say, it's probably best just to light them.
Yeah,
But at that point, we would probably do solar instead of.
yeah, that would be a major headache off of it.
Because then if you have an issue with one, it's just that one light, you have no lines run to it, it's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
single fixture.
Right, okay.
So, I don't know, we have not heard back from the FAA, they're doing this, we did submit that to
For-
Delora to get airspace to see if we would have to
Some
put
resources.
pricing, yeah.
Yeah,
We
it was,
submitted that.
it was
Ken
Ken that
did.
submitted it, so that, that may be a question to ask him in your email. Add to it, if he's heard back.
Okay.
I mean, we can reach out to Delora as well, but.
I would see some of this, so, line with, wait.
There's just something weird about having to run power lines up
Up
a
a
power
power
pole.
Well, telling me that on lower voltage transmission lines, those are super high voltage.
Right.
Typically up to 100 to 150 kVW, they can actually tie into power lines power and basically draw spare power off of the line to power the lights.
Mhm.
But because that voltage is so high, they would have to reduce it down, and it's easier and cheaper just to run.
But
direct
it's harder
lines.
to charge you for it when they do that.
Yeah, oh,
We
yeah.
still have to pay for
They
the
can-
equipment.
They can't meter it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we still have to, well, and those LED bulbs use such little power, they lose more to nature than those bulbs would take being lit. They weren't concerned about that, it's the actual ball itself that takes quite a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're not cheap,
I'm sure.
but. Right there with you. That's all right. It's, you got no need to be, none at all.
There's some chocolates up there for you.
Yeah.
Things calming down over at Times Union at all for you?
Oh, I still work at least 10 hours a day, but, I've been looking previously, just not every day. You know, some days I work 10 to 12 hours a day. Now I'm working every day 10 to 12 hours. Gotta get that done. I still feel like I'm not covering everything, but can't be in 5 million places at once.
Yeah.
Just whenever I get around to having vacation, it's been really nice.
I actually just read an article this morning, I don't remember where it was, it was Harvard Business Review, that's who it was. I forget the title of it. You're never going to be caught up at work, stop feeling guilty about it. That was their entire article, you know. A little bit is a good motivator, but if you get too overwhelmed, it just starts going the opposite way so fast that it was a pretty interesting article.
Oh, yeah, I can believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, even my email, I get it cleaned out, 5 minutes later, it's full again. So,
Yeah. Well, trust me, I get that one. I get that one.
there's things I'd like to be doing, but there's things I have to be doing.
Radio station's quiet.
For the most part today. We're repainting the inside of the building, so we've been painters here for the past month. And I have an interview to do today with the founder of Popular Brewing in Leesburg.
Oh, cool.
And the painters failed to tell me that my studio was going to be painted. So I got there and I had to get somebody else out of the studios.
I can imagine the smell was probably,
Once they got that, I don't know what they were using when I was leaving a little while ago. It was pretty strong.
yeah.
It was a paint thinner.
Was everybody okay on that accident? I apologize.
Oh.
30?
Yeah, one driver was hurt, but, I mean, it sounded like he was, like, not gonna die or anything.
He was sitting up in the stretcher when I saw it this morning, so he looked to be all right.
Yeah.
But
I heard it on the way into the office and I was like, oh.
Yeah, we have a little information, near-us photos, but I think one guy from Bremen, the other one's from, I don't remember where, but they weren't like local guys. Sound okay. Could've been worse, too, soon.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I hate that intersection. I live on the other side, just saw the Husky, and I gotta go through that intersection every day. It's
like, sometimes I'll get home between 11 p.m. or 3 a.m., depending on what day it is, and I swear, as soon as it's flying.
I had to go to Fort Wayne for a meeting this morning, and on the way out of town, there's 5 or 6 of them just parked in the left lane, and it took an extra 10 minutes just to get from Center Street out to past, what's in Big R now? I mean, we hit every single light because, yeah, well, 250 east, but, I mean, because they were stuck in the left lane and they couldn't get over every single red light, and then we were starting back from scratch. Oh, it was, that was a long
Yeah.
mile and a half.
Right, you think you're getting up to speed, you're
Yeah.
stopping again, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then waiting for the semis to get going, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was, it's what it is.
Well, there's traffic is stopped on 30, there's no,
I don't know if
no alternatives.
Could you wait for just in case? I'm
Where
sorry.
was he coming from?
He's, next to the airport.
There he is.
There he is.
There he is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Before you go to Blackwood, right?
Yeah.
I am sorry.
It's okay,
Do you know all the doors are locked?
Dan. I did not. I just sent Linda out because I wasn't sure if they were locked or not.
They are all locked.
Okay.
Can't be a very public meeting when it's locked up.
Yeah.
I will talk with upstairs and see if.
They
we
must
can-
have an automatic shut-off or
They
something.
do.
I came in at Eckler, lot 505, it was open then.
Well,
It's open for a certain
I
amount
came
of
in at
time, but to keep the rest of the
13
building
till.
secured, I know it locks,
Or after.
because typically our meetings don't last super long, so I'll talk with Stacy and see if we can get that changed for you.
Okay, the board would
All right.
first of all like to apologize for the delay in getting started. but
I am sorry, everybody.
We will now, in the absence of our president, call the February Board of Aviation Commissioners to order. The first thing on the agenda is the approval of the January minutes.
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. This is the minutes here.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, okay. And next thing on the agenda is approval of the January claims.
Okay, we talked about the American
Yep.
Electric Power.
I was just gonna say, we were discussing that earlier to put it on record. American Electric Power, that bill was $9,219.54. That was for repair to overhead power line lights, the obstruction lights on those power lines off the east end of the runway. A couple of the feed lines were damaged, and so they had to, fix the feed lines and then go up and replace quite a few not just the bulbs, but the actual structures that the bulbs go into. So that's why that bill is quite higher than what it normally is to get just a couple bulbs changed out there. Outside of that,
The Lowell bill for 29.
the Lowe's bill, Lowe's for $2,902.27. We are remodeling the storeroom in the terminal building to better fit our needs. That room is actually uninsulated, it's just cinder block walls on the outside. So we are insulating that room to, A, make it more efficient, and then B, we're going to be putting up new storage. And then that is a part of that electrical update project as well. So we won't be, D&D will be putting in a new electrical box through that as well.
Okay.
So that is a ongoing project, but that was what we have done internally to frame those walls, drywall them, insulate them, all that kind of stuff.
And Industrial Doors of Northern Indiana.
Is the repair, so we do annual maintenance on all of the doors. That will be happening next month. That was a call out for the Zimmer Biomet hangar door. They needed some hinges fixed.
I got you, okay. Well, with that,
And
Aye.
I will also add in real quick, the Av Fuel Corporation at the bottom, $3,763.43. That comes out of the Fuel Trust Fund account. That is for runway de-icer, or excuse me, that is for aircraft de-icer, the Polar Plus Light Type 1 aircraft de-icer. So, we purchased some of that, we were getting low, and then obviously the Ascent Aviation for $53,722.35.
Okay, I make a motion to accept these bills for payment, especially the $53,722.35 for Ascent Aviation and for AV Fuel Corporation, $3,763.41.
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the claims. All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? All right. Recognition of visitors. I think everybody's here all the time, so we don't have
Hello?
any visitors? Okay. All right. Moving on then. Reports. As previously stated by our president, we typically jump over the manager's report to the engineer's report, so we will do that here now. And my suggestion, Linda, is we change those in the agenda, so it doesn't confuse people like me.
We can do that.
Alrighty, first item, I did share a memo, and I've attached it to this in case people like hard copies. But it just addresses some of the hourly rates and insurance questions that were brought up at the last meeting. So we also attached a draft COI, Certificate of Insurance, for anyone that wants to see that. And if you have any questions, I can take questions on that. We also submitted the capital improvement plan to NDOT, so that has been submitted. And we were coordinating with FAA and NDOT on establishing a coordination meeting with them. And once we have a date finalized, we will let the board know. I think that Nick and I may go up to Chicago for that, and we may have some people in our office call in with NDOT down in Indianapolis as well. So anyone that would like to attend is more than welcome to attend that. I know my last bullet point item and action item progress says that we're awaiting a response from NGC. I don't want to take away your thunder, but Nick received a response from them today, so he and I have been kind of working on a response for that to get all the information that we need from them. So, for the AEP update, last month when I was here, I let you know that we had received a model from AEP that basically showed where they were proposing the new structures. And we reviewed that model and found that they did not have the most up-to-date information, so they were still thinking that the runway would only be extended 1,000 feet at a 34:1 approach surface, which as of, I believe, September of last year, the FAA had approved a 1,500-foot extension and a 50:1 approach surface. So with that change, one of the structures was actually an obstruction to the approach surface. So we let AEP know that, and we let them know the new criteria that was approved by the FAA last year. So they have that information now. We're still trying to set up a formal coordination meeting with them, but we have been reaching out to them and letting them know of these issues that we found with their model. So Nick also reached out to them because we haven't got a response back from that initial email letting them know of that discrepancy. So we're hoping that if we don't hear something soon from them, that, you know, we may go down some other avenues of how to contact them. But we have been able to review the model, and that was a big step to know that they still have a little bit more design to do with that, so.
Okay. I assume when you refer to one of the towers being in the zone, you're talking about one of the new structures?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, yeah.
And then do we know what they're gonna have to do about that, or is that still up in the air, what?
So,
They can do.
I mean, according to our energy engineer, that they would be able to still work with the proposed towers that they have. It may just be that they, you know, shift one tower over and the others may just shift slightly over as well. He was able to kind of put together a rough idea of what they could work with. They wouldn't need to add any additional towers. It just maybe shifted
Shifting
what the sag is between each tower, because there's some criteria of what that sag requirement can be from the electrical line to the ground.
Right.
So yeah, those offsets will probably be adjusted.
So I assume that means then it only reached a short distance into the zone, if they're
Yeah.
able to shift.
Yep.
It's
mhm.
just a couple feet, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't much. They actually had, one thing that had helped them was that and I think that they were doing this for their benefit, they had kind of put a 10-foot buffer on the runway elevation, so I think they were doing that for their own sanity check, so that's why all of them were basically okay, because they had already added in a 10-foot buffer, kind of for safety for their own benefit, but yeah, if they hadn't added that 10 feet in, then almost all of them would have been an obstruction, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Ms. Kirstein,
Yeah.
correct me if this is a false assumption.
Mhm.
The criteria you're talking about, the intrusion and stuff, is based off the elevation of the end of the runway currently?
Yes, yep, mhm.
Okay, so if we do proceed to regrade that a little bit in conjunction with the tunnel and stuff, we can easily gain that back on the ground end.
Yeah, so we're looking at the elevation that's in the ALP. So your current approach, and sorry, I probably spoke out of turn, but your current approach surfaces are based off of your current elevation. But your future approach is based off of that future elevation. Does that make sense?
So the intrusion that you guys have calculated based on this 15...
That's what the future extensions
And-
taken into consideration.
And how much has that elevation theoretically raised compared to where the elevation's at?
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Do you know, Nick, approximately?
It was 10 or 15 feet, somewhere right in there. I would have to
But
go
that's
back and
the
forth.
far
Yeah,
end.
Correct, that's at the far east end.
Yeah, and it would be in that
Mhm.
document that we had pulled up earlier, if you still have it up.
Okay.
No.
Oh, okay. We were just looking at that, but we didn't look at that specific item, so. But yes, we are looking at it for the future elevation, not for what is there existing.
Great,
Yeah.
okay.
So then, with 1836, again, I don't want to steal Nick's thunder, but he did hear from NGC, and they are saying that they will have the design complete in April. So the FAA needs bids in and grant applications due by July 1st. So if they do get it in by April, we will be able to bid the project and have that grant application into the FAA by July 1st.
Good.
And that's all I had, unless anyone had any other questions.
Any questions? Nope. Okay, thank you, Mary, appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Do you have any reason to believe that we won't meet that deadline?
We have some questions, and Nick and I were working on an email to NGC with, he has provided some plans for 1836 that I believe are at 80%. They were only plans. He didn't have cross-sections, specifications, cost estimates included in any of that, so it's hard for me to, as an engineer, say that it was truly an 80% set that he's at. So I mean, if he was at 80% and going to April, yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. But if he doesn't have some of those other items done, then it may be difficult for him to do that. But
What would be the
Then-
latest deadline?
Then what
the
happens?
latest deadline is July 1st.
So you're good up to that point?
Yes, yeah, that is, yep.
But
But
we have to
with-
have our bids back by then, don't we, if I
Yeah,
understand
you have to have
correctly?
bids in by July 1st, and in Indiana, I believe the minimum bidding is 14 days. So, I mean, theoretically, we could, get bids in the day before and pull together a grant application really, really quickly. We like to have more time
Prefer not
to
to
be
do
able to
that.
review the bids and everything, but if that's the crunch that we're put into, we can make it work. Normally for contractors, we like to give them, around 30 days for bidding a larger project like this, so that they have plenty of time to get questions in and really look through the plans and specifications. But
So for all practical purposes, you really need to put it out for bids by June 1st.
yes,
Yeah.
yep.
And it sounds like we should hopefully be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, from the communication with Ken today specifically, I don't foresee, knock on wood, I don't foresee an issue.
Yeah.
But no, it's, what Ken sent today was a great start, and like Mary said, we're putting together a response, just to try and, it's basically coordinating at this point, just figuring out when what is coming in so that we can make sure we're still working while he's working.
Good.
All right, thank you. All right, Nick, back to you, manager's report.
Well, half of it Mary did for me, so
I
I'm
know,
okay.
sorry, I
I'm okay with her going
Definitely
before me all the
stole
time.
your thunder.
No, so that was the update that I was just gonna give, with NGC. We had a great email from Ken today, so, I worked with Mary and I spoke with James, the city engineer. We've got our ducks in a row. I've got an email that I'll shoot off to Ken either later tonight or tomorrow and just start that process back and forth. Outside of that, fuel usage report for the beginning of the month, unless you guys have any questions. It's January, it's slow. I will say this, we're very glad we haven't had to plow as much snow this year. We're able to get that remodel project, we were gonna do that this summer, and so we've been able to move that up, and we're working on it here this winter now, and get that going. Other than that, unless you guys have specific questions on the income report, the fuel usage report, my other two main things were the snow removal policy and then the land lease issues that we needed to discuss.
Any questions for Nick?
I don't have any.
Dan?
Nick or Mary, on the ALP approval for the 1,500-foot runway extension,
Yep.
we received that September 30th, am I reading that right?
So I say September 30th, it was approved by, you have certain dates that are on the ALP, and it was signed by the FAA's planner on September 30th.
Okay.
So it was signed by NDOT like September 18th, if I remember correctly, and it was signed by your ADO manager September 20th or something. So it has signatures from
So
NDOT, from
we
FAA.
officially got it back around the 30th?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah,
I think we signed it in August.
Yeah. So, So yeah, that's just the date that the planner from the FAA signed off on it. And he doesn't sign off on it until everyone else has signed off on it. So he's kind of like the very last person, so,
All right, thank you.
no problem.
If no further questions, I'll go into the snow removal.
Go right ahead.
All right. Most airports the size of Warsaw don't really have snow removal policies or a snow removal plan. When it snows, they plow the snow off the runway and you move on with life. With the corporate traffic that Warsaw has in and out on a daily basis, I thought that it would be a really good idea to sit down, work with some of our corporate tenants as well as our GA tenants, give them an opportunity to give feedback to the airport, see what their needs are, what their criteria are. The FAA has changed how we as an airport grade runways. As pilots, Dan and John, you're familiar with, good, fair, medium, poor, nil. That is how pilots still grade the runways. We as an airport have moved to the Runway Condition Assessment Matrix, the RCAM. And it is a FAA document that says if the runway is dry, it's a 6. If the runway is wet, it's raining out, it's a 5. If there is less than 1/8 of an inch of compacted snow, it's a 4. And there's a breakdown of all of the different potential runway conditions, from what could be on the runway, from snow, light snow, slush, ice, freezing rain. All of those are graded differently, and then we can put this is what the runway is. It is a 0 through 6. 0, the runway has to be closed. Typically, if it gets below a 3, I would close the runway, because below a 3 is not safe on our runway to land a jet. Because of that displaced threshold, because of that declared distance, 4,100 feet, anything less than a 3, in my opinion, as airport manager, would not be safe. If we close the runway, pilots can't land or take off. But ultimately, we give them a number, it's up to the pilot and command to make the decision as to whether or not they are going to take off or land. Certain aircraft have better performance in bad weather that other aircraft do not. It comes down, turboprops are actually better than jets because they can do what's called beta thrust, where they can invert their props and slow the aircraft down without ever touching the brakes. Jets that have reverse thrust, where it cups and it prevents that forward motion, that helps with the deceleration project. And there's actually certain jets that have forms of anti-lock brakes. And depending on the type of jet and the size of jet, some of that works better than others. And because of insurance rules, FAA rules, and everything else, I think that it's a really good step for the airport to look into a potential snow removal policy that it's going to be a living document that we revisit. If something new comes in, we can incorporate it or change the document as we move forward. But to put policies in place, specifically when spreading chemicals, when we put down runway de-icer, for us to put about a 45-foot swath down the center line of 927 that's 5,000 feet long is right around $5,000 per application. If you add on the solid de-ice on top of that, you can add another $2,000 to $3,000 really quick. So it gets very, very expensive per application. And if it's an active snow event, there's no reason to go out and put product down, because as the snow melts, it dilutes the product, and then that turns into literally a sheet of ice that will be, we learned the hard way a couple of years ago, where we thought we were putting down a product to prevent ice from forming, and it didn't form during the snow event, but as soon as it was over, it dropped down to about -10, -20. That product had diluted enough, and either side of the next day, it was a beautiful sunny day like this morning. By noon, the outside third on either side of the runway was completely clear, and that center line was a sheet of glass. And so we learned really quick, yep, this is not a good product as a preventative. It is solely meant to get ice off of the runway once it has stopped coming out of the sky. So putting that down into a document, so if customers have questions, or if they want to include, you know, their feedback, what numbers do they need? As a customer, they know exactly what they need to be able to fly that aircraft. And so that would just kind of formalize everything so that the whole airport knows exactly what's going on, both in an event and then afterwards during cleanup as well. So I was briefly talking with John the other day, or excuse me, just before the meeting, and if board member or two members would like to be a part of that, you can be. I am more than willing to call our corporate tenants, have a meeting with them, put together a draft, have a meeting with our general aviation tenants, consider their needs. Typically, if it's icing, general aviation guys are not flying, they don't have de-ice on aircraft. But the jets, as soon as they are moving forward, they're not worried about ice because they have ways to keep ice off of the aircraft. So just learning everybody's needs and then trying to put that together so that we're A, operating the safest airport that we can operate, B, accommodating our customers, and then C, still being fiscally responsible at the end of the day with the funds that we've been entrusted. So there's a definite balance. I've reached out to several other airports in northern Indiana. Like I said, most airports our size and smaller, they just said we plow snow when we can. Some of them have the capability to put product down, some do not. Others will call the county and have them come out and put sand down. It just kind of depends on the airport. So I'm going to lean on some of our larger airports to see what they do and try and mirror, say, a Fort Wayne or a South Bend or something like that.
Do you use sand at all anymore?
We do not currently. We haven't. 10 years, Linda, 12 years. It's been a very long time since we've used sand. The issue with sand is if you put sand out and it's really good during freezing rain, freezing drizzle, anything that's going to fall and then freeze. Sand is very, very good at keeping that slushy. But as soon as you clean up, you have to have a broom to be able to remove that from the runway, or it can kick up and chip paint on the jets. It can be sucked into the engines themselves and cause issues that way. So there's pros and cons to using sand, and until we have a really good way to broom the runway or blow off the runway, it's something, again, I would like to get to in the next couple of years, but we need a couple more pieces of equipment before we can get there.
What about the product that the city and county uses prior to a ice snowstorm, that it's a liquid that they're putting on? I don't even know what it is.
So it's a salt brine mix.
It is, so
and we
you can't
can't
use that, okay. I was just asking whether it was something you could use.
Perfect example of this.
I thought
and
they were using some, I thought they were using some kind of a organic
beet juice.
beet juice or
Yeah.
something.
Same thing, we can't use that.
Can't use that either. Okay.
On a day like last week, Thursday afternoon into Friday morning, I mean, I think I was at the airport until 1:30 on Thursday night into Friday morning, just to make sure air cargo got out safe. And we as an airport can't put down enough product to keep that runway clear. You know, if you look at a Fort Wayne, you look at a South Bend, they can charge passengers. It's called a passenger fare charge. Whenever you buy a ticket, that passenger fare charge goes to the airport for those day-to-day operations. It's everything from fixing lights to de-icing the runways, paying those crews overtime, you know, because they're manned 24 hours a day. And so that's another decision that the board has to make. How much, you know, do we do, if it's going to be a snow event overnight, do we do split shifts, send some of our guys home, and then they come in at 7 o'clock at night and then work until 7 a.m.? How are we going to work that? And we've not really sat down and done a formalized snow plan. And so I think that that's just a next step that we need to start working towards. So Fort Wayne can put down in one night of that kind of weather. I don't know this that this is how much they spent, but I mean they could put down $30,000 to $50,000 worth of product because they've got commercial flights coming in and out. They've got to keep going their scheduled airline flights. We can't put that amount of money. That's more than we budget in a year for runway de-icing. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up and just see if you guys had any immediate thoughts, concerns, questions. and then how you would like me to move forward.
Anybody like to volunteer to be on that?
If I'm available, I will volunteer,
Okay.
but I don't know if I'll be here.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, I'll do it.
I mean, I'll be happy to.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
and I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
Unless there's anything else on that, the only other two things, Linda did a land lease audit for me. Carrie Sloan of Hangar 11 was up for option to renew. We have no reason to not renew his hangar lease, and so I would support it to the board that we renew his lease for another 10 years through December 31st of 2029. So if you would like to make a motion on
Make a
that.
motion.
Yeah, let's do them one at a time. So, you want to?
I make a motion to extend that for another 10 years. We haven't had any problems with
Not
them.
at all.
Second.
Okay, they moved to second it, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
And
so moved.
you guys will need to sign that.
Oh, yep, we do.
The second one was an oversight on my part. It was just a paper mix-up. I talked to the company. It's through Sylvius Aviation LLC. They were actually up for a land lease extension in 2018, but in 2017, they had a restructuring of business. The hangar, we had to assign the lease from RAC Aviation to Sylvius Aviation LLC, and so through that, I just missed that we were supposed to do the option to extend, and so they're asking that they extend their lease through the 31st day of December for 2027. They have continued, nobody's noticed that, that the lease wasn't up to date. We just caught it while doing the internal audit there, and again, great tenant, absolutely no reason not to support this 100%.
I make the motion that we extend the lease for another 10, dating back to
Backdating, correct.
2018.
Again, second.
Okay, been moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so, anything else, Nick?
That's it.
Okay, any other questions or comments from anybody? Okay, then, we stand adjourned until March the 10th, I believe.
I believe that is correct. I was pulling that up. March the 10th. We'll see you then.
March 10th?
5:15. Pretty straightforward tonight.